G'day guys, how we going? Welcome to Talking Boxing. It is Monday, April 17th, 2023, and as always, what a big weekend, whatever you want to call it, for boxing around the world. What have we got here? We've got Big J already in the telecast. How are you, mate? What have we got there? G'day, Lyndon. We're going to discuss the Zoo versus Zarafa 2.5 billion BS that I saw over the weekend. Yes, Big J, I have got that on my list. Well, we can start off with it. We've got a fair bit, obviously, to get through. But with that, if you're not familiar with it, yeah, $2.5 million. Look, I don't even know who to believe anymore, Big J. It's going, shots being fired across the bow. I've got a feeling who I would probably believe more, but I'll leave that up to your imagination. We'll go over that in a sec, Big J. But other things, Team Maloney has hit Las Vegas. They are over there preparing for the May world title fights. Can't wait for that one. We've got... I think we discussed it last week anyway. But Stevie Sparkley and Paro, both fighters, both probably Australia's best, well, they are Australia's best super lightweights or junior welterweights, whatever you want to call them. Both with big fights locked in. Some news on No Limit next two shows. So a couple of big events happening and big names on those cards. And the international news, of course, it's fight week. Javante Davis, Ryan Garcia. We had Zhang over Joyce on the weekend. Actually, not some more interesting news is the amateur scene. Some interesting news happening with the International Boxing Association. So a little bit of breakaway maybe happening there. And, of course, we'll go over the Box Rec schedule. Plus, I'm going to dive in the deep end this week and go over my updated Australian top 10, which I'm sure will always cause controversy. It always does. People tell me I don't know anything about boxing, but it's just my opinion. I'm going to put it out there. Get your opinions on my current top 10. A few positional changes, I will say, just to forewarn you. Carl, g'day, mate. How are you? Welcome to the show. Big Bang taking over the heavyweight division. Yes, he did. Big Bang Zhang. He certainly did. Geez, it was a good fight, wasn't it? Well, I won't say it was a fantastic fight, but the result, it's really thrown a spanner in the works as far as the world heavyweight scene goes. All of a sudden, Zhang is the man. Everyone wants a piece of him, so we'll talk about that as well as we go. Carl, another one, mate. Arnold Barboza Jr., no joke. Great matchup. Yep, well, that's Liam Paro's opponent, of course. We'll discuss that. What do we got there? Frank Maselli. How are you, Frank? Welcome to the show. Love the show, mate. Best to meal prep to. Is that right? Well, at least I'm good for something, mate. But sort of, obviously, while we're on a little bit earlier at 7 o'clock, to give everyone a chance, including myself, a chance to settle in for the night and not be here till 10 o'clock at night. So it's great. So we've got a few viewers in here already. Let's start off with what we just discussed there, guys. What do you think of it? So if you haven't heard about it, of course, it is Tim Tszyu, Michael Zarafa. I don't really know where it all started. I think Michael Zarafa, from what I've seen, has put something up pretty much implying that he's the big dog in Australian boxing. Tim Tszyu has got that shitty little interim title that I think, he's sort of alluding to. He's fighting for the real title. And if Tim Tszyu's lucky, that he might give him a shot down the track. That's sort of what I'm reading into it. Tim Tszyu, of course, not sort of much Tim Tszyu. I think he's a little bit above that. He doesn't really get involved in all that sort of stuff, I suppose. He just lets his team do the talking. So they did the talking. Apparently there was a massive offer, the 2.5, whatever it was, offered to Zarafa. He's claiming he was only offered about 10% of that. Still a massive payday. I don't think that's necessarily right. I think from what we've seen with the No Limit boys, they do tend to pay the fighters what they're worth. My personal opinion is, and I'll be very interested to hear your opinion, I would think a fight between the two at this stage of the career would be 85-15, maybe 80-20. And I'm not saying that lightly. I'm just going by the fact, and that is that Tim Tszyu is a massive name in Australian, by the biggest name in Australian boxing, the most popular fighter in Australian boxing, and whether it's an interim title or whatever it is, I think he accepts what the title it is. It is a legitimate type of title, I suppose, and it's a hell of a lot more than what Michael's got at the moment. Michael, I think, if he gets that WBA belt, all things change. But until that happens, because it was, just to backtrack a little bit, there was word that, well, I think it's fact that No Limit offered the June fight to Michael Zarafa and he turned it down because he was only offered 10%. Again, I don't know the exact story, but that's just my honest opinion. I think 85 15, maybe 80-20 in Tim Tszyu's favour. I think that's just where they're at the moment. As I said, that changes big time if Michael Zarafa wins the WBA world title in June against Arislandi Lara. But as it stands at the moment, Tim Tszyu is the man, and he dictates everything. And I know Michael's got the flash manager from the States now who probably thinks he can handle those little boisterous Aussies down there. And what do they know about boxing? You know, I've been around and I'm this and that. That's a little bit of mentality as well with the Americans talking to us. So I'm sure that would have been a little bit of the fly in the ointment or whatever, spatter in the works, whatever you want to call it, to getting the fight done. But that's where I see it at the moment. I would love to see this fight, and I still think we will see it. But if the fight gets done now, then Tim Tszyu, 80 worst case. I'm thinking more 85-15. What have we got there, guys? I've just a few comments coming through. What's the shirt? This week it's lions, not sheep. Big J, be a lion, not a sheep. Plenty of sheep in the world at the moment. Don't be one. Be a lion. Control your own destiny. Fight the power and all that sort of stuff. I got in trouble last week for getting a little bit too political with the what shirt was it? The Let's Go Brandon shirt. I won't do that. But this is more. It's not so much political. It's just a mantra, I suppose. Big J, but lions, not sheep. You can imply what you will with that, but that's the way I like to live my life. There's enough sheep in the world, then be a lion instead, or a wolf, even better, be a wolf. Anyway, we'll move on. Mitch, how are you, mate? How's the starting been the last few weeks? Getting more stable, it seems. Thanks, Mitch. Mitch, I didn't actually mention last week that Mitch reached out to me. I really appreciate it. To be honest with you, Mitch, I haven't done anything at this stage. I inquired, and I've had a little bit on the last couple of weeks. I really appreciate you actually reaching out to me. It has been a little bit better. It depends on the time, the day, the weather, all that sort of stuff. But at least at this stage, we're holding up, mate. We'll see how we go if we get someone on the show. We'll put the link on soon, but it hasn't been too bad. I was thinking about reaching out to Elon at some stage, but anyway, it hasn't been too bad. Carl says, Tim beats the piss out of Zarafa. Carl, look, you put it more eloquently than what I do. I think Tim, and looks, it's not a slight on Michael Zarafa. I really admire what he's done and where he's got to with a lot of obstacles, I will say. He's had a lot of different hurdles he's had to jump over the last few years to get where he's got to. I promoted a couple of Michael's earlier fights in his career back in 2016, I think it was. And of course, the Horn Zarafa fight in 19. But I know how hard he's worked to get there. And I know he's not the most popular guy. I get that. But you do have to respect Michael with getting to where he is now. He's on everyone's lips in Australia. A lot of it's for the wrong reasons. But Carl, as I said, you put it nice and plainly there. I think Tim stops Michael, just my honest opinion. I think Michael won't be easy. I will say that. It's probably the hardest opponent Tim would fight. That's saying a lot considering he's fought Tony Harrison. But I just think Michael Zarafa, when he's got the right mindset, the right opponent in front of him, can do some damage. But I think Tim is, from here to here, and I think Tim stops Michael in sort of 7 or 8, 9 rounds. I think that's just my opinion. Frank, what do you got there, mate? Lynden, do you see No Limit doing a show in Melbourne, and who would headline? Okay, well, I'll jump ahead with this one as well, Frank. Just speaking of Tim Tszyu, of course, we'll get back to him in a second if you've got anything to add. Looks like it's going to be May 24th in Melbourne, Frank, and that will have Jai Apatira, I think, maybe if the legal stuff doesn't cause any dramas, and Nikita Tszyu will be on that card as well. I think Jade Mitchell will be as well. So that's May 24th in Melbourne. And then the big one, June 18th, I think, from what I've heard through the grapevine, June 18th on the Gold Coast will be Tim Tszyu against whoever he's going to fight. I've heard a lot of things thrown around, but I won't put names out there. I'm sure you guys can guess who they're sort of talking to, but I've just heard bits and pieces. But that's the date I'm hearing, is June 18th on the Gold Coast, not Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane. It's going to be on the Gold Coast, and as I said, May 24th in Melbourne. So if it is Jai Apatira, of course, he'll headline. Nikita will probably be the main support, or Jade Mitchell might throw his hat in the ring. So that's what I'm hearing at the moment, Frank. Carl says Zarafa would be overpaid at 250. I reckon that's probably around the mark, Carl, and it probably adds up if you think about it, the 10% of the 2.5, if that's what they're talking about. Look, it's a massive fight for all concerned. Now, I must admit, if it was me in No Limit's position, as far as his fight goes, I wouldn't even, I won't call it lowballing, but I would go to Michael Zarafa, probably expecting he's going to want probably a little bit more than you would normally be prepared to pay. And as I said before, I would think 15, maybe 20% is about the maximum. However, with the amount of money that could be generated with that fight, I'd be saying, okay, well, what do you want? Let's make it 30, even 35%. If it really came down to it, give it to him. Do the sums. If it does, hang on, I'll get my trusty calculator out here, putting my promoter's hat on again. I think it's probably going to get about 250,000 views. I could maybe say $60 a pay-per-view. They could probably get 70. Let's go on the worst case view. 250,000 at $60. It's $15 million. Plus the gate, plus sponsorship, plus everything else. Let's even put that aside at the moment. That just pays for the lights and ring and officials and all that sort of stuff. That's $15 million. So if you've got to pay an extra $100,000 as a Rafa to get the fight over line, who cares? He's got to be $200,000. If he needs a $500,000 payday, I would be giving it to him. That's just me, to get the fight done. Now, whether it does 250,000, maybe I'm jumping the gun. Let's just say it did 150 times 60. I mean, that's still $9 million through the till. Not bad money. So if it costs an extra 100, 150, 250, I'd be saying, Zarafa, there you go, and just getting it done. Because sometimes you just got to get it done. You know, you can go back and forth and everything else. And I think No Limit going into a meeting with Zarafa's team would know that they're going to play hardball, and they're going to, and probably vice versa. Zarafa knows that Tim Tszyu's going to come in there, or his team are going to want the lion's share and all that sort of stuff. If I was No Limit being the lead promoter, I would just say, what's it going to take to get you in the ring? And if he says it's going to take 500, give him his 500. That's just what I would do. Get the fight done. It has to be done. They're going to make a shitload of money out of it. Biggest fight, an Aussie fight since Mundine Green, 16, 17 years ago. Get it done. So, and that's the way I reckon No Limit sort of play the game a little bit, I reckon. They just do what they've got to do to get the right card, you know, the card they want, and they pay extra. I've heard through the grapevine as well, a certain fighters probably mean the managers have told me, shit, I didn't expect we'd actually get what we asked for, because No Limit want to put on the best fights, and in this case, this is the biggest fight in Australia. I must admit, it still doesn't make overly amount of sense why Zarafa would even consider it. He's got a world title lined up for June. Why would he pass that over to fight for Tim Tszyu's interim title? Doesn't make sense to me, so I can understand why they've said no. If it's about that, if it's a money thing, that's what I don't understand. But with Tim Tszyu, on the other hand, it does make obviously perfect sense. They want a good, well, does it make perfect sense to take a massive risk against Zarafa? Now, of course, they backed their man to beat Zarafa probably any day of the week, and that's fine. But still, Zarafa's shown, obviously, against Hardman, things can, and other fighters as well, he can get the job done if he's, you know, if it's the right night for him. Again, I don't think it happens with Tim Tszyu in the opposite corner. But it just, for me, it doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense from either party to take the fight. But if both of them did say, okay, Tim Tszyu said, I want to take the risk, and Zarafa says, well, I'm going to put that aside because I want to fight Tim Tszyu, and if I win, obviously bigger opportunities will come to me. Let's get the money right. Let's get it done. But as I said, it just doesn't make sense to me with Michael why he would contemplate fighting Tim next when he's got that world title fight. I know he did actually mention, I think, in one of his interviews that he said, well, you know, if I win and Tim Tszyu, we can fight for all the belts and everything. Well, that won't happen. You're either going to fight for Tim's belts or you're going to fight for Zarafa's belt. There's not going to be all these belts because one's at middleweight, one's at super welterweight. So I didn't really understand that. Again, maybe it's trying to talk it up and get the casuals out there involved, all that sort of stuff. I understand that, but it would either be Tim's 4 titles if he wins, but would Zarafa actually get a shot at the super welterweight world title belts when he's middleweight? So would the sanctioning bodies actually allow that? Especially when you've got Spence saying, oh, I want to fight for the titles. Then you're going to have maybe Mendoza put his hand up. Maybe Charlo wants a rematch. All these sorts of things. I just don't get it. And then, of course, the only way it might happen is if Zarafa wins the belt and then Tim goes up and fights him for the 1 belt. So anyway, lots of different things involved in there. But Carl, 250 would be, you're probably right, 250 is around the mark, but as I said, I'd give him 500 if it was me, just to get it done. But anyway, BJ, I'll send you one of my shirts. Hey, bring it, mate. Send it to me. Inbox me. I'll send you my address, and I'll be happy to wear it on the show to the couple of hundred odd people that actually watch the show. That's fine. I'll wear it for you, Big J. Send it, mate, for sure. I'd love to. What else we got there? Yes, Andy, like and subscribe, and welcome to the show, mate. Great to have you along as always. Yimmy, not sure I've seen you on here before, Yimmy, but welcome to the show. Tim versus Michael is a good All-Australian clash. They could make a good event out of it and a good stay busy fight. I'm not sure it's a stay busy fight, Yumi. I will say this is a massive fight. As I said, this is the biggest fight since Anthony Mundine and Danny Green Mundine Green back in 2006. Unlike the Mundine Green situation, I've got to say, I think this is more a manufactured type of thing. And good luck to them. They can see the the prospects of what sort of money this fight would make and the interest it would generate. So that's great. Do whatever you got to do. But the Green Mundine thing was just dirty for a lot of different reasons. There was genuine hatred, bad blood between the two. There was, we hate to say it, there was the racism undertones of the whole thing, all that sort of stuff. Lots of things involved in it, and that wasn't manufactured. That just bubbled along, and the public pretty much demanded it, that these two fight. This fight, on the other hand, I think this would be more a case of them pushing it on to the public. Of course, we all want to see, fight fans, we all want to see this fight. But to be honest with you, if they went separate ways and Tim beat Charlo and fought Spence, that sort of stuff, and Zarafa fought Lara and beat him and maybe fought Triple G or the other Charlo or whoever, I wouldn't be too stressed about this. I'd love to see the fight, but it's not really a fight that makes my mouth water, I will say. It'd be a great fight. I would love to see it. But either way, they go separate ways. I'm not really stressed. But for the Green Mundine thing, I just remember back in 2006, this fight's got to happen. Let's go. We'll keep going with the question or the comments there. Oh, Coach Mr. B, how are you, mate? I'm very well. How are you? Thanks for joining in. If you've got a question there, put it in the chat. Jules, how are you, mate? What have we got there, mate? Who is Zarafa's trainer at the moment? I think he's training at Team Alice's gym, so it would be Nigel Smart, I would think. Now, yeah, he's training at Alice's gym. Does his corner lack experience at the pointy end? Very good question, Jules. Yes, I think so. And I know Nigel pretty well from back in the day in the amateurs. No, I don't know him really well, but he was around when I was fighting. I remember seeing him in there and saying good day and that sort of stuff and watching him fight from South Australia. Yes, I think so. Just my honest opinion. So, yeah, he is at the Alice gym. Good gym. You know, a lot of fighters coming out of there. I think good trainers base themselves there as well, so it's been good. But that's from what I've heard, Jules, is that, and he did actually train him for the Mundine fight. Now, I don't know what happened there, because then Sam Labruna came back in the fold. Or did he? No, he didn't, did he? No, because he went back to Alice's. No, Sam Labruna promoted the Hardman fight. So I don't know what happens there. All I do know is he's had a lot of trainers over the years, a lot of managers, a lot of promoters, which is why I said before he's done so well getting to this position. And now it looks like he's really aligned himself with the right team. Elvis Grant over in the States obviously knows what he's doing, been around a long time. He's a bit of a heavy hitter in the industry, so that's great. But the trainer thing, I must admit, does surprise me, Jules. With so many excellent trainers out there. Now, I don't know Nigel Smart as a trainer, so I'm not, putting shit on him. But from as far as I know, he hasn't really had anyone at the level. You look at Tim Zhu. I mean, he's got one of the best teams in the business in his corner. So, but I'm not quite sure where Nigel Smart, if it is him, falls into the scheme of things. And I know there's that bit of fallout at the moment with Sam Labruna, but Sam was still a good trainer. So, but with all the really good trainers around, I'm not quite sure why he's based himself there with that trainer, Jules. I can't say. I think I said, excuse me, a while ago, when all this was going on, my advice to Michael at the time, said this to a couple of people, was to get out of Melbourne and go to Queensland, knock on the door of Angelo Hyder's gym up in Queensland with on the coast up there with the Maloney boys and Bruno Torimo and all these other really, really good fighters up there. I would have knocked on the door. I mean, how could you not get a more professional gym? Get out of the bubble of Melbourne. If you're from Victoria, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone's got their head up their ass at certain stages. To get out of here, get up to there. Anzo's an excellent trainer. Tony Tolge is an excellent manager. You're training alongside the Maloney boys every day. What more could you get? And from what I've heard, the gym is growing. A lot of fighters coming in from overseas and basing themselves there. Because if you don't know, it's like a training facility, a training camp. The Maloneys obviously live close and they train there, but a lot of the fighters, they think they've got living quarters there, base themselves there, Angelo's a great trainer. As I said, Tony Todd's a great manager. They've got a really good setup there. That would have been my advice to Michael if he had to ask. But anyway, he's made his choice, and good luck to him. He obviously knows something that we don't, and I'm sure Nigel's smart. Hopefully, we'll get him in good nick and get him ready for that title fight with Lara. We'll move on. James Daly, Zuzarafa, a clot-chasing circus. Well, it is a circus, mate. And it develops into a circus. Unfortunately, when Michael's involved, everyone piles on and it becomes a circus. I think Tim Zoo, to be honest, to be in his gym training hard every day, shrugging his shoulders and going, what? What's going on? Who's doing what? I don't think he'd really know or care. I was surprised to see Michael comment or reply to a few people on social media. I don't think that's normally the way. I know that in this day and age, everyone lives on social media, and even though you say don't look at it or reply to comments or take it personally, obviously you do at that level. So, but I would think Tim would shrug his shoulders and just go back to training, and then No Limit and Elvis Grant will be obviously bartering back and forth on the phone. Glenn Jennings would just be going about his business. So, but to us fans out there, James, yes, it does become a bit of a circus, doesn't it? Just for some reason when Michael's involved, he's just that type of guy that it becomes a circus. And look, I think he's great. One thing I will strongly disagree with him, of course, and I think Elvis Grant was just sort of throwing it in and reeling people in to say that, Michael is, the A side of the fight. He would sell the fight and all this sort of stuff. Look, it's obviously completely different. The Aussie scene is different to the American scene. Let's face it. In Australia, we really laud our sports heroes, I suppose, and our main sports people, and we get behind them. As long as they're humble, we get behind them, which is probably why Michaels hasn't got the greatest fan base out there. In America, it's probably who can be more controversial and say the more controversial things tends to get the following. A little bit different here. But even though Tim's not the most outgoing guy, let's face it, his interviews aren't exactly, traffic stopping, they're not overly exciting, but that's just Tim Zoo. That's just who he is, and that's what we all love about him. The minute that fight gets signed, it's all about Tim Zoo and what he's going to do to Zarafa. That's just a fact. And maybe Michael's playing on that already to plant the seed. I don't think there's going to be any drama with Michael if you're watching. For any by chance you are watching, it's going to be absolutely no worry about who obviously is the A side and B side as far as the fans goes, and who's the hero and who's the villain. But play it up, make the money out of it. I really hope he takes that fight. And I think the other thing to consider is if these guys fight, if both happen to win the world titles, which would be awesome, and Tim decides to move up for a title at a different weight and Michael's got it, that fight could be worth $1.5 million for Michael. So maybe it's not a bad thing to hold out. Of course, you're playing with fire. If you don't win, then maybe where do you go in the pecking order? But let's just see if Tim wins and Zarafa wins and they both move up, or Tim moves up to fight him, that could be $3.5 million for Tim and a $1.5 million for Zarafa. Great, excellent money for this part of the world. But anyway, we'll see. Rowan, g'day, mate. What do you got there? Sorry, random question. Do you think No Limit with a TV deal could pull off a contender series? Pick a division with good up-and-comers and build to an Australian title fight or something. Mate, 100% they could do it. 100%. It's been done in the past, and that's when no one had any contract. So the only thing I could think of, Rowan, where it would not happen is, do they have the time? Unless they outsourced it to someone else if they were able to. I mean, these guys have been contracted to, 4 pay-per-views? Is it a dozen or 14 or something? Normal shows, the Fox night, No Limit on Fox, I think it's called. It's a lot of shows, I will say. I think it's too many. I think 10 for the year would be good. Take out January and December and do 1 a month for the other 10 months. That's what I would probably think. And then have the 4 pay-per-views. That makes more sense to me. But if they're allowed to maybe outsource it to a production company and, do it that way, then why not? But that's the only thing I can think of. But could they do it if they had the time? 100%, Rowan. And it does make sense. You remember back in the day when Anthony Mundine did it, blew up in his face, of course, and Fox's face, because, what was it, Garth in the Hood knocked him out. Of course, the rematch was massive, but it sort of, come a bit of a cropper for them. But it can work. That was a massive success, and it was really, really well done. So whether it's along the same concept or whatever, they can maybe invent their own one. But Geez, there's a lot of sort of junior middleweights to middleweights out there at the moment around the mark. You know, who you could probably put in and have an 8-man competition or a 16-man. I think we actually have 16, but maybe 8, where they could do a camp and all that sort of stuff. I don't know, but that sort of seems more plausible to me. But good question, mate, because, yeah, 100% they could do it. Mitch, any ideas on George's next fight? Now that we know it won't be on the Haney undercard, we need Noonan back on. It's killing me waiting for George's next fight to be announced. Nick Noonan won't give me anything, Mitch. I spoke to him just not long ago, and it's very tight-lipped, very polite, very, how you going? All good? How's the family? But I ain't telling you shit. I mean, I just asked him what we all know, of course, but I've got a feeling it's very, very close because I think it's in early June. So what are we? So it's about 5, 6, 7 weeks away. I would think within sort of next week or two. I'd be very surprised if that doesn't get announced. As for the opponent, mate, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know. I did try and fire a few names at noon, and just to confirm, is this person or that person? And yeah, he changed the subject pretty quick. He's in the middle of doing something anyway. He was filming or editing or doing something, so he didn't give me a lot. But yeah, we probably need to get him. Maybe we'll get him on once the fight is announced, but I don't know. Sorry, mate. Frank says, are we having another quiz this week? Seems confusion on the format after Mikey took Tassie title as quiz master. Yeah, it didn't go down overly well, Frank. I had a feeling that if Tassie didn't win, he'd throw the toys out of the cot. But nah, look, I have spoken to Mike over the weekend. He said, hey, I'm happy to do it. And look, what I will say is I did it that way because if you know the personalities of the two, I'm sure you guys see it out there. Tassie's like a tank. You know, he's right in your face, you know, no holds barred. Mike's a little bit more reserved and a little bit more how you going and not really the combative type. He's a very measured, calculated type of guy where Tassie's in your face. I just wanted it so that it wasn't a matter of Tassie just blurting out his name and Mike just sort of not being involved. So I thought I'd just make it so that, hey, well, let's have 10 questions. They can choose it so they can both have measured responses and we can just see who knows what without any of that, who's first in and who's a bit more domineering. That's why I did it. But Mike has said to me, hey, mate, if it makes Tassie happy this week, I will go the traditional route, what you've always done, and we'll see how we go. Doesn't mean the questions are going to get any easier. Now, I will admit, Frank, and I think some of you guys would agree, the questions probably were a little bit hard, a couple of them. Most of them weren't too bad, but there were a couple of hard ones. And I think the what song did Donny Lalonde walk out to when he fought Sugar Ray Leonard was probably a bit hard. I only put that in because I'd seen the fight a few days earlier and thought, geez, I don't remember that, so I chucked it in. But anyway, that's why I went down that format, Frank, but we are going to go back. So we'll see how it goes, and let's hope everyone behaves, because if they don't, then I'll just knife it. We've got other things we can discuss. I don't need controversy. Oh, and the other thing too, by the way, Frank, the reason I wanted this format as well is because we've had problems in the past with internet speed. From their end, they think they're first. We had this problem with Peter and Tassie, where from their end, it looks like they're first, but from my end, the other one's first. So that you would have seen, doing a little bit of this. I just want to be in good spirits. I don't need any aggravation. So we'll see how we go. But yeah, watch on Wednesday night. Jules, Linda, would you consider getting back in the game to make Zaraf happen? I would love to be involved, Jules. But these guys are heavy hitters for Zaraf. There's no way I could be involved. I'm way out of the out of that now. But look, like you, mate, I just hope it gets done. So, but to answer your question, no, I wouldn't. I'd have no input into that at all, mate. But they don't need me involved, of course. What else we got there? Carl. Maxie Hughes was the next opponent for George, so I've heard. Yeah, there was talk about that, Carl. I'm not sure whether that's 100%. I did hear that was the initial opponent, but from what I've heard through the grapevine, that might change. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, remains to be seen. As I said, it should be a week or two, and then we should have some news. But yeah, I don't know, mate. But yeah, you're right. Maxie Hughes was going to be the opponent. Yes, Andy, smash the like, please, and let's get it going. Build the channel, of course. Mitch Cook, that's what I've heard too, Carl. Hoping it's here in Australia, but starting to doubt it will be. I doubt it too. Mitch, this is Cambosa's fight, of course. Yeah, don't know. It depends who. Look, there's still the massive problem with the TV, and if No Limit can't get involved, it makes things awfully murky unless they get, of course, a streaming service involved, whether it be Stan. Now, if I'm George Kambosos, I'm saying, hey, I'm not fighting on Stan. I'm not fighting on streaming app. DAZN might be a little bit different, but I'm not sure what all that's about either with the contracts and arrangements. But George, he's got to be on main event in Australia. So that's probably why it doesn't happen. I'm sure No Limit would be happy to sit down, but the contractual things in place would obviously make that impossible. So, but yeah, I'm not sure. I think it'll be in the States, Mitch, just between me and you. I think it'll be, and I think George, I think he'll want to, his last 2 fights have been in Australia. He wants to get back amongst the world scene. So I'd be surprised if it's not in the States. Carl, mate, that's a bit below the belt. The ref will forget to turn up again. I think he'll turn up, mate. But you got to let that one go, mate. You got to let that one go. All right. So Big J Hughesy is next for George. Just waiting to announce. Okay. Well, I know you know your stuff, Big J. So if it is the case, then it's Max Hughes. Okay. I heard that it wasn't a done deal, and they'll just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. But if it is the case, mate, then that's great. Let's just wait for the announcement. So happy days there. Carl says Jamal Charlo wants a tune-up fight before Tim, so they won't meet until next year. Is that right? I didn't see that, Carl. I saw that it might have been thrown out there, but I'm not sure. I didn't actually see him quoted as saying it. Well, I did see them butting heads on the weekend, the two Charlo boys, having a bit of a to and fro on the Instagram Live. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Probably have some good sparring sessions too, I'd probably think. But if that is the case, Carl, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's an interesting one because Jamal Charlo is probably within his rights to apply to the sanctioning bodies and say, hey, look, it's not my fault. I've got the injured hand. I need a tune-up fight. I haven't fought for 18 months. I want a tune-up fight. When you think about it, they'd be pretty hard-pressed not to say, yes, you can have a tune-up. Which again, the more fights these guys have, the more they just tend to drift apart. Remember, this fight was scheduled for late January. We're in mid-April at the moment, so yeah, and it's going to be probably September, October. You think if Tim fights on June 18th, I would think it's going to be 3 months. So it's September if you ask me. If they're going to fight at all, and you're right. If Jamal's ready to go and he wants a tune-up, it's probably within his rights to request it, and I would think it might be agreed to, which then maybe makes it early next year. So Tim will probably have another fight after that. So it'd be crazy to think that it would be a year between when the fight was actually scheduled to when it was put back to, and they finally actually do fight a whole year. And Tim would have had 3 fights in that time. So anyway, we'll see. When it comes to the Charlo, Carl, anything's possible, mate. Who knows? Who knows? Carl again, mate. What do you got there? Big J, I've noticed George starting to fire up his social media again. Yes, he's definitely putting it out there. Can see the announcement coming soon. I think Nick Noonan's been throwing the hook out a little bit as well. So, as I said before, I would be surprised if it's not a week or two and we'll know. And if it is early June, as they're saying, would probably have to be end of this month, I would probably think. So, Andy says, what do we got there? Congrats, Shakur. Kambosos versus Hughes, Cruz versus Lemos. Hence why Shakur fought and beat Yoshino, as Cambo and Cruz were busy, apparently. Yeah, I think, look, I got no dramas. I'm not quite sure about Cruz, Andy. I got no dramas with George saying no to Shakur at the moment. I mean, he's just come off 2 big fights against Devin Haney. He needs a win, if not 2 wins under his belt, just to get back in the game. And if he fought Shakur Stevenson and took another loss, which I think we all agree might most likely be the case, although anything's possible. I'm just not sure where George goes after that. I mean, he's had the 2 losses to Devin Haney, but he needs a win. You can't begrudge him that. He needs a win, if not 2 wins, and then maybe, I think if he actually got a good win, if it is Max Hughes in June, why not fight Shakur Stevenson towards the end of the year, maybe September, October, November? That would be a massive fight, and that would be a strategic move for me, if you ask me. I think that's the fight for George. Beat Max Hughes, then fight Shakur Stevenson next. Massive, massive fight, massive money, massive stakes, and that's where George Kambosos is. I think he's at the stage of his career. He doesn't need to keep stepping back. It's okay to get that one tune-up fight out of the way. It's not that, it is technically a tune-up. Max Hughes won't be no pushover, but I think George wins. But that's a good fight for George, and then step back up amongst it. he's amongst the Lomachenkos and Haneys and Stevenson and Garcia and Davis, these guys. And if he took another loss to Shakur Stevenson, he's pretty much out of the game. He's pretty much out of the picture. So I think it's a good move from George to take the Hughes fight if it is the case, and it looks like it is according to Big J. Then fight Shakur Stevenson at the end of the year, who has already said he wants to fight again in another couple of months. So probably adds up. If Shakur Stevenson maybe fights in sort of June, July, probably July, maybe him and George fight in October, November. Be perfect fit for both. And with that stage two, the Haney-Lomachenko fight's done and dusted. Haney will be looking for someone else. The only way probably the George Shakur fight doesn't happen is if Haney says, well, now I want Shakur next. I don't think that'll happen next, if at all. I don't think. Yimi says, Tim versus Arafa could be a big stadium fight in Australia. Bet your ass it would, mate. Pull in good pay-per-view numbers. They'll get a ton of sponsors, and Tim's got a big Showtime deal. That might be a $20 million pot. Yep, well, as I said before, Yimi, 100%. Doing the sums. I think they could easily put it at a stadium. I'm not sure whether it be Melbourne or Sydney or it could be somewhere else. I'm assuming, well, I would think they could do a Green Mundine 2 situation and put it out to tender. Who's going to give us the most money? And as we've just seen on the weekend with Adelaide, maybe they could throw the hat in the ring. They, of course, got the Green Mundine 2 fight. The Premier over there is in a good mood. He's rubbing the hands together, throwing them some money out. If you're not familiar with it, at the weekend we had the gather round in the AFL. If you're not familiar, if interstate, you probably know about it, but you don't care, from New South Wales, because it's a rip-off of the, is it the Magic round of the league? Sorry, won't call it rugby, the league. The Magic round of that, where they all gather in one place. They did it in Adelaide on the weekend. Every single game, the 9 games were sold out. Having said that, I think 2 or 3 of the games only had a capacity of 7,000 or 8,000, but I think they might have had 3 or 4 45,000 crowd. So they sold out. Anyway, what it did, they sold over 200,000 tickets across the weekend. Adelaide was absolutely packed. Every man and his dog was over there from all over Australia, and apparently they made tens and tens of millions of dollars. They gave the AFL $15 million to put it on. From what I've sort of read today, they probably would have tripled that in return as far as investment into the state. They've got the Live Golf on this weekend, another massive investment. So who's to say that fight doesn't happen, Yimmy? That the South Australians say, hey, we'll put our money in for it. And at the end of the day, the promoters are going to take whatever they can, because the gate itself is this big. It's the pay-per-view numbers is where all the money comes from. So they probably don't care. I will say that I was at the Green Mundine fight in Adelaide, and it really did lack a lot of atmosphere, even though they had, I think, 40-odd thousand there on a football field. You know, and I'm AFL as it gets, by the way. But I don't agree with them putting them on AFL fields. They're just way too big. And if you're from a league background or soccer or from overseas, a AFL field is twice as long as probably a soccer field or a league's field or American football, whatever you might be. It's way too big and wide. These are cricket grounds. Just way too big for this. So I don't think they should have it at a stadium as such, as far as Marvel Stadium where George fought Haney. I would think they could probably do it at Rod Laver in Melbourne. I think they can probably get about 15,000 in there. But yeah, I'm not sure whether Marvel Stadium, it probably makes sense because it's got the roof. And if it is a stadium fight, it's got to have a roof, because Melbourne weather is so unpredictable. But if they could probably do it in Sydney, I really love the Kudos Bank Arena. I'm not sure what they could probably get in there. But while it could be a stadium fight, Yimmy, I don't think it should be, as I said, at an AFL ground. And Marvel Stadium ticks all the boxes. Central, it's got a roof. It can house 50 or 60,000 people in there. It makes sense, but I just don't think it's conducive to a great atmosphere. So anyway, but you're right there, mate. And the pay-per-view numbers, I think what they could probably do is put it at a stadium where they can maybe get 20,000. Maybe they could do it in Queensland. I think, didn't they do it in Toowoomba or whatever that was, up the far north? The weather's obviously always good. They might tip the hat in the ring as far as the tourism dollars goes. So I don't know. I just think it'd be great. But no matter what it is, if the fight happens, it will be massive, and whoever bids for it and gets it, it will be huge no matter what. But as I said before, as far as the promoters goes, they don't care, because it's all about the pay-per-view numbers, and the 20 million pot isn't out of reach, I don't think, Yimmy. G'day, Tommy. How are you, mate? Welcome to the show. Mitch, what have we got there, mate? The next big event we get, whether it be Zoo or George here in Australia, would be good to get a talking boxing meetup. Endless opinions and stories of the sport we all love in there. Well, mate, it'd be great. I did sort of do something along the lines that the Zoo Harrison fight. Myself and Mike Altamura had a live talking boxing, I suppose you'd call it, if you can call it that. It was more of a well, I suppose it was a cross between talking boxing and the deep dive show. But hey, I would love to do that. Set up a talking boxing where if you're there, come and obviously join in the show live, or of course send the questions in. But I really like the concept of the whole talking boxing thing, Mitch, because I think end of the day we're all just fans. We want to talk about it, and while there are a lot of social media sites out there, I just want to do something different, actually interact with everyone and give everyone a say rather than just getting 4 or 5 of my mates on and, on Instagram or something and, getting our opinions. I want, your opinions. But it's a great point, mate. But if we do go to a fight like that and we can get there live, then of course, if you guys are there, I'd love to have you there. We are going to do a talking boxing live from the States too, and I'm over there in May for the Maloney boys as well. So count that in. I think I'll have to be up at 1 or 2 in the morning. But either way, I'm going to do it. We're going to do a live talking boxing either from Stockton or from Las Vegas. Might do it from Vegas. Be nice and warm. I'll just do it out in the plaza somewhere. Never know who we'll meet, eh? I won't read that out, Carl, but I'll get you your point there. Tim runs Detroit. Houston, Texas is next. All right, well, we'll see. All right. Dundee Luke. How are you, mate? What do we got there? Love your work, Lynden. Any news on Justice Honey? No, nothing yet, Dundee Luke. That's a nice name you got there. Which Luke is it there? I wonder. What Dundee? Nothing on Justice Honey at the moment. Luke, he's obviously just signed with, who was it? Matchroom. So I'm sure there'll be something soon. But they keep the cards close to the chest, don't they, a little bit? Mike or someone, I might ask Mike or Noonan Boy or someone like that, because they tend to know, sort of have their ears to the ground. So what do we got there? Old mate Big J again, hider in Kingscliff, Northern New South Wales, about 50 kilometres south of the border. Yep. So, but doing great things up there, Big J. He's just, I don't know, if that was me in that situation and you wanted a good environment, a good team, all that around you, and you don't have to work and you've got sponsors so you don't have to do it, then I would be up there in 2 seconds. That's just me. Shane. Haney staying at 135 after Loma fight and wants a Shakur fight, apparently stated by his dad. Yeah, we'll just see how it goes there, Shane. Look, I don't know. You guys would have seen it when he fought George last time. He looked like death warmed up when he got off the scales, didn't he? It was a really... he didn't look good, and he does the weight so hard. I wouldn't be surprised if he puts on 15 kilos or 30-odd pound after the weigh-in. Just a big guy when after he's weighed in, and he looks huge in there. So I know he did say that, Shane, that he was going to stay around, but I did also read that maybe they're going to see how he pulls up after the Loma fight. That's a great fight though, isn't it? That to me makes me forget about Spence and Crawford. That does. It's like, yeah, boys, you had your chance. You guys could have been the next Leonard Hearns, but now these guys are going to be the next Leonard Hearns. Or McCrory and Curry, back in the day, Milton McCrory, Donald Curry, I'm talking about, in the mid-'80s. So, yeah, it'd be a great fight, Shane. I hope he does stay, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if maybe Garcia beats Davis, I'm interested in your thoughts about that, by the way, but if he does beat Davis, does that become a massive fight at super lightweight for Devin Haney? Who knows? But if Loma wins, geez, that throws everything up in the air too, doesn't it? So either way, we're going to be in store for some great fights, Shane. But, I know his dad did say that, and Devin said it, but I'd still be surprised if he stays there, unless it was massive money, but we'll see. Andy, bugger that. Jamal Charlo dragged it long enough. He says we'll beat Tim Easy, so let's hope hop to it ASAP then. Yeah, let's hope so, mate. But anything with these guys are possible, mate. And as we've seen with the sanctioning bodies, anything's possible there as well. So, look, as I said, mate, I couldn't begrudge Jamal Charlo asking for a tune-up. I really couldn't. And I don't think there'd be a lot of argument to say, no, you can't. It's not like he's been putting it off deliberately. We can all speculate. But at the end of the day, he's had a broken hand. He's been out of the ring for 12 months. So I wouldn't like to see it, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. Yimmy, what do you got there, mate? Cambosis is fighting the IBO. Yep. Hughes, that's a good comeback fight and a new belt to win. That'll put George back on winning ways and maybe in line for another big fight. Yeah. As I said before, mate, it is for the IBO title, of course. And getting back, it does look like it's going to happen. I'd heard otherwise. But, yep, if that's the case, Max Hughes, IBF Championship. And I think George has probably stated the IBO, it means really, I won't say it means nothing because the people that have it, of course, it means everything too. But as far as the scheme of things go, it doesn't really mean a lot. But for George, what it does mean, he's back in the game. He's got another belt. He's back amongst the A graders, and anything can happen after that. You've got to remember, too, guys, it's a business. If he takes a Shakur Stevenson fight, he might make $500,000, and if he loses, it's a hard road back. If he beats Hughes for the IBO title and then maybe fights Shakur Stevenson for that belt, we could be looking at $1.5 million. So it's a massive choice to make for the managers, and not everything is just black and white where it's what us fans want to see. Everything's got to happen at the right time, which is what I said about Zoo and Zarafa before. Maybe not quite the right time right here and now. Maybe in 12 months' time it will be. All right, Andy, you're responding to Shane there. So Bill Haney says, I believe it when I see it. Yep. He loves to talk it up a bit, doesn't he, old Bill? If Loma fights Dev's last... the Loma fight is Devon's last on the top-ranked contract. He may shuffle depending on the dollars. Talk could just be to bring eyes to the Loma fight. Yep, we'll see. Yeah, well, that's the other thing, isn't it, Andy? It's Devon's last fight with Top Rank. He's met that deal with Top Rank, so he's a free agent, so he can pretty much do what he wants. So he'll be probably playing, even more games with that one. What I'm going to do as we're going here, guys, if I can remember how to do it, where are we? I'll put the link in if you want to come on the show. I've had a couple of people ask me in the last few weeks, so I'm going to put it in. If you want to come on, there is the provision to do it, so I've just whacked it in there. Let's get a few more comments there. I think I've just lost my way there. I'll go back. I've got a lot of comments there. All right, here we go. Oh, I'll go back again. Mr. Pads, g'day, mate. Welcome to the show. Carl says Brian Mendoza is a new one at 154 to give it a shake up. Yeah, not quite yet, I reckon, Carl. I reckon he's definitely obviously in the mix. I wouldn't be surprised if Fundora will probably want a rematch there. And I think Charlo and Zoo, as we've said before, this whole Zoo Charlo thing could be an ongoing saga for the next 12 months. Who knows? So Brian Mendoza is going to have to take his time, I think. Maybe he'll go up to middleweight and fight one of those guys. Who knows? Lynden, hectic stream. I hope that's a good thing, Mr. Pads, that the stream is working. We have got the link in there if you want to come on. If anyone wants to come on and have a chat with anything you want to talk about. LDBC was saying Tony was going to whoop Tim, then make excuses when Tim stops Tony. Yeah, it's amazing how they go a little bit quiet, isn't it, Andy? He was going to school Tim, wasn't he? And he's gone very, very quiet afterwards. He did obviously had the passing shot that said Tim's still not that good, but anyway, they can say what they're going to say. James, won't a tune-up fight for Jamal Corzine be stripped of WO title in August deadline? Yeah, there's a lot of things a lot of water to go on the bridge there, James. When you've got 4 sanctioning bodies involved, who knows what's going to happen. The WBC, I reckon, will go, yeah, whatever you want, Jamal. The WBA might be a little bit in between. They might be okay. The IBF are normally pretty strict on this sort of stuff. They're probably the ones I would think that, or maybe the WBO, both of those. IBF are normally very strict on this sort of stuff, so that wouldn't surprise me if they stripped Jamal, and the WBO might say, well, Tim's our interim champion. We're now going to make him the full champion, and then you can fight him for that later. Who knows? But I think the WBC will just bend. The WBA are very unpredictable. The IBF are very down the line, and the WBO, quite rightly, could say, yeah, you're our Tim's our now interim. You must fight him next, or we're going to strip you. Either way, they're going to fight. They're going to fight, no matter the shake-up of it all. The only way it doesn't happen if Jamal decides he wants to move up. And why would you want to give up your world title belts without actually losing them unless you're moving up in weight? Doesn't make sense to me, but we'll see. G'day, Matt. No dates and years for Tassie. Yeah, well, that getting back to the quiz. Yeah, he didn't like that, did he? I thought I'd mix it up a little bit with a few different dates and years. He, as I said before, threw the toys out of the cot when it didn't suit him. But as I said to him, mate, it was going to be the same questions asked. It just depended on what format we're at. I could have just spat them out. You still didn't know the answers. So anyway, we'll see how he goes this week. Frank says, did you ever cross paths with Gianni Rivera during the amateur days? Not that I can remember, Frank. What era was him? I do. What? Hang on, I'm just going to Google him while we go because, of course, what era? I just want to see what year he was actually around as an amateur. But no, to answer your question, I don't remember him, to be honest. Let's have a look. Yep, from Chile. Yep. All right. I do. Oh, that's Michael. Hang on. Sorry. Where are we? No, I haven't got the info on him there, mate. Gianni Rivera. All right. So it says here. Oh yeah. So born in '73, bantamweight. Yeah. Oh, okay. So he's from Melbourne. Okay. Trained by Maxi Bowman. Okay. No, I didn't, mate. To answer your question, sorry. I knew I recognised the name, but no, I don't remember him, mate. Lynden, sorry, Mr. Paz says, Lynden, what's the biggest fight you've helped make? Easily Jeff Horn, Michael Zarafa, Pad's man. That was in conjunction with Dean L back in 2019. So I was just massive. I mean, made no mistake about it. I was very much the, the B-side promoter, all that, or the understudy. We had because Dean was probably at the top of his game then. This is Dean L events. It was obviously had Jeff Horn, was probably the fighter in Australia at that stage, and he wanted to take it rural and get a bit of the sponsorship money, whatever you want to call it, from the local governments or councils, whatever you want to call them. So he contacted me about. I had a little bit to do with Dean in the past, but he contacted me about facilitating that in country Victoria, and I hooked up him and the Bendigo Council, and he was obviously the lead promoter with with Jeff, and I helped with the undercard and the local media and the venue and the combat board, all that sort of stuff. So Dean was the lead promoter. I was underneath. We had different roles, but I had an awesome experience, Mr. Pads. A real good learning curve for me to be part of it all. I met some really big players in the sport. And at that stage, I was just doing shows for 600, 700, 800 people in Melbourne. So to be part of that, 5,000 we got to the Bendigo Stadium. Probably could have got another couple of thousand in there. It was sold out in the end. A lot of requests for tickets, but it was just massive in the town. And Dean, I know he's got a lot of detractors out there, but a brilliant operator. Worked the media beautifully. If you remember the event, we had all the dramas with the ring girls, with the whole thing. We ended up with a ring boy, or ring man, or ring guy, whatever you want to call him. Because the local woke media, if you want to call them that, decided to have a crack at us because we were employing, and they were the ones I hired for all my shows, by the way. They were awesome girls. They loved what they did. They were dancers and all the rest of it, and they loved, and models. They loved what they did, and we had to put them aside to make a point. I wasn't overly happy about it, I will say, with Dean when he did it, but he put the girls to one side and brought in a guy to do it just to make a point, because the local woke media were getting stuck into us. But that's the biggest fight I've been part of, mate. I'm going to bring in a guest before we get into everything there. I think it's a Big J. Let's have a look. See if he's on there. Have I got him there? Hang on, I'll bring him in. Big J. Maybe I've got the wrong. There he is. G'day, mate. How are you? Oh, can you hear me?
Hey, mate. How are you?
Good, mate. How you going up there?
Can you hear me, mate?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right. I can't hear you. Hang on. Let me turn it up.
Yep. Can you hear me there?
No, something's not right. Let me just yank that out. See if that. No, that didn't do that.
I can hear you. Oh, no. Can you? That's why we don't do lives, guys. That's why we don't. Hang on.
I think it's
you there? You got me? Can you hear me?
Hang on. Give it a sec.
Yeah, you got me there? No. You haven't got me? I can hear you.
Like, mate, I'm just waiting for the picture to come in.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll get a couple of questions while we're going
no,
there.
Mate, on your side, guarantee it.
I can see you and hear you fine, mate. So I don't know what's going on there. It's all good. Maybe
Nah,
jump
it's
out and
me,
come
mate.
back.
It's me. Don't worry about it.
All right.
It's just taking a second to kick in.
Okay, hang on. I'll go back. All right, here we go. All right, we'll get some more. All right, Jules, I knew this question was going to come up. Any thoughts on the Kamikayo car on Saturday night in Melbourne? Kamikayo won. That's the main thing. Big J, can you hear me there? There's
Yeah,
no
he's got
lag.
himself.
Can you hear me?
No, mate. No, he's got a couple of regional belts under his. Yeah, mate. Yeah, I can hear you real good.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yep.
What do you got, mate? There must be a delay here, is there?
Yeah, mate.
All right.
Yep.
I think we've got a delay there, mate, of
We've
about
got a lag, mate.
yeah, it's on about 20 seconds. What I'm going to do, I'm going to exit you out, come back in, and we'll give it another go. We'll just see how we go. All right.
Right, mate. Yeah, I guarantee it was on my side.
All right. It's all good. We'll get him back. All right. That's what happens. That's why we don't do it, guys. The work's okay, but then he's on a delay. So anyway, look, I didn't watch the card, Jules. I'm happy that Kamikayo won. I did see the results of some of the undercard. I have talked to some people that were there. Look, I'm just being honest. Those people said they wouldn't pay again to see a show like that. And as I said last week, look, I understand. Look, don't make no mistake. That guy was a good opponent for Kamikayo. He's trying to keep busy, keep the wins happening. He's a tough, durable guy. He's gone the distance with everyone. Lost a lot of fights, but never been stopped. So no drama. Kamikayo, it's the undercard that I wasn't really impressed with, Jules. I saw the girl come in and fight wherever she was from, horrendously overmatched, out of her depth. It was not good. Matt Sheen's opponent, it lasted, a minute, if they were lucky. I just think when it comes to the undercard and you're putting your hand out for $250 to $300 a ticket, you've got to invest a little bit in the card. So just my opinion. Let's have a look with Big J again. Hang on, I'll bring him back in. Let's have a look. Are you back, Big J?
I hope so.
You are. We can hear you, and there's no delay. I can hear you. I can see you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, mate, I can hear you. There's probably about a 5-second delay, but we'll put up with that.
That's better than nothing, mate. What do you got for us?
Oh, well, yeah, mate, I thought I'd just put my ugly mug on your show. So you like your shirts, I've got mine. I'll send you one.
Hey, I would love one, mate. I would love one. What
and,
do you?
And the new feature, tackle yourself a bull and wrestle yourself a croc, mate.
Spoken like a true Queenslander.
Only Rocky people do it, mate, because we're the only ones that have the river and the bulls at the same time.
Is that right? Okay.
Mate, Rocky is the only place in the country where you can tackle a bull and wrestle a croc at the same time.
You can have that, mate. I'll stay down here in cold old Victoria. I think you can have your crocodiles and whatever else you got going on up there.
Well, toughen you up, mate. It's good for the soul.
Oh, I bet it is, mate. So as far as the boxing goes, what do you got? What do you think of the whole Zarafa Tim Tszyu situation?
Bullshit. Mick's probably tied up with fight. I mean, that's probably just a publicity stunt that they're doing to remind people that fight is a viable option at some point. So that is what's going on there.
What do you reckon, though? What I said earlier, though, with the timing, because as I said, it doesn't make sense for the timing. Tim, I can understand he might have wanted, to fight Michael, but it's still a big risk. But it doesn't make sense for Michael to accept the fight. So you got to give him that. It just doesn't make sense. He's got the fight with Lara, so why give it up to fight for an interim title at a weight below?
Well, that's exactly. I mean, I said that when they first initially did this fight, that this fight made no sense. It's nothing more than a bragging rights fight at this moment.
That's it. Exactly.
There's no belt on the line, right? I mean, as we said, Mundine Green was the biggest missed opportunity in Australian boxing history because it wasn't for a title. It was a bragging fight.
Yep. No, I agree. It just doesn't make sense to me. And you're right.
No,
it can still be a bragging fight, but it's just about timing. Let Zarafa fight for his title. Let Tim fight for the titles. And I'm sure in a year's time, they're both still young guys. Still plenty of time for this to happen.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I think it actually probably will be Green Mundine 3 because by the time they fight, they'll be probably around the same age.
Early 30s, yeah.
They'll probably do it in 5 years where they're both in their mid to early 30s.
Yeah, well, let's
So,
hope we
I
don't have
mean,
to wait that
Tim's
long.
only 28. Tim's only 28. Zarafa's 30. I think he just turned 30
30.
the other day.
Yep.
Yeah, so maybe 2 or 3 years. But at this stage, and considering they're both under no limit, they can do that fight whenever they damn well feel like it.
Yeah, exactly right.
So,
But what it does do, though, is get people like us talking about it, like we've done for however long, and now all of a sudden it's just starting to die down. Now it's flared up again, and you probably got to give them both. Well, not so much Tim, because as I said before, he tends to like to stay quiet, but doesn't mean No Limit doesn't get vocal. But now Michael's out there. I think he's actually enjoying it, to be honest. I think he loves sort of stirring everyone up a little bit about it.
of course, he bloody does. He loves playing the heel. I mean, are you familiar with wrestling terms, heel and face? Do you know what that means?
No, I got no idea, but
Okay, heel's the bad guy, face is the good guy.
okay.
Okay, so Mick loves playing the heel. So, and Tim's obviously the face. He's always going to be the face because Tim can do no wrong in Australian boxing at the moment.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I mean,
yeah. Well, we've got a question for you then. So Michael has come out on numerous times and said about the whole, I wish Australia would sort of get over it all and embrace me a little bit more. I'm going to fight for a world title, and there's the mental health, and this does all this sort of stuff. But then he comes out and dangles the carrot out there. I mean, I think sometimes you've got to pick a side. Do you want to go on about the impacts of mental health and being crucified like he has, but at the same time stir up the people you're trying to calm down?
Well, that's sort of like an oxymoron, isn't it? That's sort of like, poking the bee's nest and, hoping they don't come after you. So anytime you present yourself, yourself included, on social media, you are vulnerable, or you're setting yourself up for people to come after you.
That's right.
In any way, shape, or form. I mean, 99% of those people that come after you are nutballs that you don't need to pay attention to anyway.
Yeah.
But there only takes one comment to get to you, which I don't care what people think of me. I couldn't care less. Yeah. So, but I think what he needs to do is, this is sort of like a side piece to remember, Mick's got the title fight. And I really think that's what this is about, is that this is a side, like they're doing the Zarafa thing to remind him, Mick's got a title shot coming up.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think he's just spelling it out to all the casuals out there, I suppose, and even some of the hardcore ones that don't sort of seem to forget that Tim's title is still an interim title. And Michael's saying, "Hey, I'm fighting for the real belt. You've got your little interim title over there," and I think he's just making a point, isn't he?
The regular belt's not the real belt. Who's got the real belt?
Who knows?
Is this the one that Triple G's dropped?
I think
the real belt's the super belt.
Oh, so who's got that then? I thought Triple G had given that up.
Triple G's still got it because this is the regular belt. This is the belt below the one that's Triple G's got.
I thought that Triple G gave it up and they instated Lara as the full champion. That's what I thought it was.
If that's the case, then great. But I thought it was only the regular belt. I don't think this is the super one. Can we confirm that?
Let me have a look. I'm going to have a look on.
Have a look on box reference, Matt.
Yeah.
Because if it's the regular belt, it's not the big belt. It's just the underling belt.
Okay. I thought it was hang on, I'll have a look now.
I could be wrong. Let's get our facts straight.
All right. So at the moment, we've got middleweight Arizlandi Lara, full champion.
So he's the WBA super. There's no mention of Triple G.
Just makes no mention of Golovkin at all. It's just Lara. So you've got the WBC is Charlo and Adams, or Adam is however you pronounce it. Then you've got Lara as the WBA. IBF is vacant, and then for WBA you've got the Russian. So there's no mention of Triple G at all.
It looks like Triple G dropped it and then they elevated him, which is fair.
But it's funny though. He's ranked 1 by this is Golovkin. He's ranked 1 with the WBC and 1 with the WBO. So I don't know how it all works, but as it stands at the moment,
but if that's the full belt, then good on him. Because as we know, Tim's belt is an interim belt. It's not the real deal. It's like someone winning the reserve grade grand final. Yeah, it's a grand final, but it's not the big one.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you. So I don't know. I think it's good that to keep it out there. Maybe they're just trying to just keep the coals hot. They might know that it's not going to happen for 12 months, but just to keep the fires stoked, and so that when it does happen, they're ready to go. And the fact that they've got them both under the one umbrella, I mean, it's so easy. But I will say the other thing that's a little bit surprising is that So Rafa is now a no limit fighter. He signed it, whether it be 2, 3, 4 fight deal, whatever it is. So it's a bit surprising that Elvis Grant is out there pretty much, prying the bear out, or what they call it, stoking the bear as well out there.
Poking the bear.
Poking the bear. Sorry, poking the bear.
Probably because a lot of international boxers, a lot of international promoters, and Eddie found this out real quick, don't realise the stranglehold that No Limit has on Australian boxing.
Probably more than any other promoter in the world.
And Eddie found that out real quick because he was supposed to have a September 24th date, if you recall, and No Limit chased him off it. No Limit chased him off it, and then he had that show with not Lara, Paro and Jarvis, which, in my opinion, if people disagree, come after me, leave a comment, benefited nobody.
Yeah.
Who benefited from that fight? Brock got sent back to fighting, journeyman, and what did Liam get out of it? Zip.
Yeah.
He got his number one spot taken off him.
Yeah.
Now he has to fight for it again, and the show was done in what, 2,500 crowd?
It was. I think they lost a lot of money on the show from what I've.
There's the reason why Eddie's not coming back because, well, he screwed himself because he should have put Ebony versus Shannon as the main event.
Yeah, 100%.
He was too busy because, Ebony wants to flash a bum on the scales in Britain or whatever the bloody hell she wants to do. So
yeah, well, good luck.
Let's not get that. Would be nice.
Yeah. We won't talk about her until we have to, I suppose. But look, I don't know. I just think I
will say one thing about Ebony. She's a lot tougher than bloody Joe Joyce. Her eye got busted. She kept going. So
big time.
Ball your finger out. You got a little tiny little woman who has the size of a baseball. She keeps going. What's your excuse, mate? Hook into it. You got one, lose an eye, you got another one. Hook into it.
Yeah, look, as a fighter, I got full respect for Ebony Bridges. Like I probably didn't up till when she fought Shannon, but she really proved me wrong. I thought that Shannon would.
She did. I just don't like the outside theatrics that she.
No, does. Look, I don't like the whole OnlyFans and the whole way she stirs it. What do they call them? What do they call them? The simps or whatever they call it. That's a new way.
Oh yeah, those razzle dazzle wankers.
I'm not exactly sure what they are, but
well, they literally are, mate. Because that's all they do. They take their photos and. They'll never get anywhere near the girl. They're idiots. Anyway,
I read a story about her today, actually, when she actually said, hey, these creeps out there, they want my bath water and my dirty socks and all this. They're creeps, but, hey, I'll take their money. So, hey, you can't begrudge her. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a business sense, she's extremely smart, but morally, I mean...
Yeah.
I've said a lot about her, and I'll continue to say a lot about her. But the consequences of her actions will come later in life. I get a lot, as Uncle Chop Chop taught me. Life will get you back.
Yeah.
So,
I hear you. Mate.
I've got a question for you.
Yep.
Do you think over the last 2-year period, Australian boxing has been anywhere near its success as it is right now? I mean, not even 1985 comes close to what we're achieving.
I don't think it's ever been in a more healthy position. Yeah, I don't think it's ever been in a more healthy position. I think I've had this conversation with Tassie a few times about the talent maybe, and he was quite right when he said, well, I don't agree that the talent is any better these days. They've just got more opportunities, and I have to agree with that.
I agree with that.
Because back in the day,
there's too many frigging belts. That's the problem.
That's the problem. But I was just going to say before, like on the no limit thing, is that you've never seen ever, or maybe you have, that a whole country is controlled by one entity. The whole boxing in one whole country, the size of Australia.
Not even the Mundine scale, because he wasn't a one person show back in his day. You still had Green and a few other blokes floating around.
Yeah. So
I mean, the stranglehold that they've got on Australian boxing, while is a phenomenal achievement by them, I think in retrospect is not a good thing, because whenever it's a monopoly, what happens to a monopoly when things get too big? Things start falling apart. I think they need other. I think Fox Sports, my opinion, made a mistake in being exclusive to No Limit, even though they put on every other international show, but they can't throw a bone to the other guys. I mean, that's just Fox Sports. I mean, you go to Bean for Ace Sports, and who's the other bloke that's out there? Ace Promotions, and who's the other major player?
Is there another one? Is there?
No, there's DNL, there's Ace, Tasman.
Oh, Tasman. Yeah.
Yeah, Tasman, and they appear on, like, you'll see him on Foxtel, but you won't see him on Fox Sports.
Yeah,
I mean, you get KO making a difference anyway, so you'll see him anyway. Yeah, but
I mean,
I'm
with you. I'm with you on the the answer to your question. I don't think I've ever seen Australian boxing healthier. And as I said, not so much as far as just the talent goes, because I reckon we've always had good talent. They just didn't have the opportunities they do now. And you can't blame all the good fighters for going over to No Limit. And I think to answer your question with Fox, I think the probably the jury's out with whether it's going to be good down the track. But I certainly, from if I have my Fox Sports hat on, can 100% see why they've just said no limit, just take it. We've got all these other big sports we're dealing with at the moment. Let's just give it to the one that's got the runs on the board, who's been a proven performer. As long as they keep delivering, then they can just have it. That's the way I think they say it. Boxing was in the too hard basket.
To be fair, I mean, how many bad shows have No Limit made? I can only really think of one.
No.
Well, the one that was really bad was Gallen versus Luxic. That was a terrible.
Who was on that card?
Paul Gallen versus Darcy Lucky. It was basically a footy fight show, and it was bad.
I think I might have been away for that.
Horrible stoppages, and if I remember correctly, yeah, it was bad across the board. I mean, it was what the main event was 3 2-minute rounds, for God's sake. That's an amateur fight.
That's the type of show that I hope they do this and go, and I would hope that Fox Sports say, hey, let's stay away from that sort of stuff.
They won't do that again. They're too smart. They are far too smart. I mean, for an ex-footy player, George Rose has really done well. You got to admit it.
Gallen,
sorry?
Who's that? Gallen, did you say?
George Rose.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
An ex-NRL player who's got, how much boxing experience has he got? Zero?
Yeah, zero.
I don't think he's ever fought in his life. For what they've done is nothing short of phenomenal. I mean, you got to take your hat off to them because they've done fantastic things for Australian boxing. But everyone wants to jump on that bandwagon, and you can't say a bad word against them because they put on, and the undercards are just phenomenal each and every time. Right, with the exception of one show, you can let that, that's a pass. Everyone has a bad show every now and then. So, but what they've done is just phenomenal. I hope they keep going what they're doing. But they haven't had a good run for world title fights because they're 0 for 3. Shannon lost. Liam lost, and who was the other bloke? David Light lost.
David Light, yeah, that was a shocker.
Yes,
that was a shocker.
Yeah, that was. He was never going to win that fight. No. I mean, he was. I mean, isn't he a blown up light heavyweight?
I think so, but I said on the show after the fight that I just can't believe this guy even laid a glove on Jai Pattaya, let alone beat him, even though it wasn't the amateurs.
Yeah, well, I've said this before and I'll say it again. What happens in the amateurs means absolute bugger all when you step into the pros.
Yeah, it does. Different sports.
I mean, it does help your career. I mean, obviously, Lomachenko and most of the guys that got medals of some description, Floyd, who's that heavyweight bloke? What's his name? Bomber. Deontay Wilder.
Oh, yeah.
AJ won. They've all, the ones that win medals go on to have very successful careers, and that's always been like that.
AJ, yep.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that just because you're a good amateur means you're going to be a good pro.
Yep.
So it's a completely different game, as you'll attest to.
100% different. It's a different sport, totally different. It's just crazy how you can be a good amateur and not a good pro, and vice versa. So, yeah.
No, exactly. But I tell you what, those Maloney boys, that we're going to, by June, we'll have, 10 world champions? Is that going to be right?
Who are the others?
Okay, we've got Jai, Ebony, Shanika,
yep.
Floyd,
Dennis,
Jasmine, Beck, Hawker. I'm counting these minor belts as well.
Okay, yeah. You're scraping the barrel there, but I'll give it to you.
Hey, how many have you won?
Oh, 0.
Exactly. So people that criticise people for winning minor belts, bugger you. How many have you won? Don't criticise something you've never won. So
no, I hear you. Look, as I keep saying, like in the scheme of things, they're not really worth anything, but they
minor
do.
Titles, but still,
yeah.
I mean, if you were to walk up to someone that won a reserve grade grand final and said, "Oh, that's nothing," especially from where I'm from, expect fists coming your way because they will defend it, and so they should.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Dennis. Oh, no, Dennis is. I like Dennis. I've spoken to Dennis many times. So Dennis, half. And who's the other one? There's one more. Am I missing one? How many is that? That's got to be at least 8. Jai, Ebony, Shanika, Beck, Jasmine, Floyd, and
I'm just looking through the ratings now.
Dennis, that's 7.
Yeah.
You got the Maloney twins will be.
And then we might have,
If
or does
you're
Tim
gonna-
count?
here's a question for you. Where do you put the IBO above an interim title? Here or here? Where do you put the IBO above an interim title? Your opinion.
I think the interim title's still above IBO, to be honest.
But you can't unify interim title when you can unify the IBO. I would put it above it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, to be honest with you, I almost see the IBO as like some sort of regional title. I know it's like a WBF is the same. I know, and you're 100% right. Yeah, like you're 100% right. There's still a world belt, and no one wants to disparage the people, the guys or girls that have got them. But at the end of the day, you got to look at it as far as facts goes. And I think even George has said, if he wins the IBF for him, he doesn't really view himself as a world champion. It's just, it'll set him up for bigger fights down the track. And I think Dennis Hogan has a similar way of thinking.
I think most people do when they get it.
Yeah, and even with the girls, the WIBA. Look, here's a quick story for you. I promoted a girls WIBA fight a few years back, and I got the belt. And at the time, I had a 10-year-old son who loved wrestling. I wouldn't even give him the belt to pretend it's a wrestling belt. That's how bad the belt was. So that's why I don't rate it at all, because the belt itself was like, it was a shit belt. I've seen the real belts before up close, and they're great. No matter, even the IBO ones are great, but the WIBA one, it was all plastic and falling apart and fake. It was shit. Yeah. The color was running off. It was just a shit belt. That's why I don't rate it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, fair enough.
Not to say that's not to say to take anything away from, say, someone like a Beck Hawker, because hey, she's an excellent fighter who's a world-class fighter, and I really hope that belt, as shitty as like the actual physical belt is,
the makeup of the actual belt,
to a world title fight against a WBA, WBC, IBF, or WBO. So, and I think she's good enough.
They work closely with the IBF, those WIBA mob. So you get one of those, you rank pretty highly with the IBF.
So that's
what I've been told.
Yeah, so if that's the purpose of it, that's the way I see it. That's how I rate it as far as the ratings goes. But I don't know. Look, for me, it's the big four, and none of the else matters. That's just how I see it. Not disparaging against the fighters themselves, as long as, because as I said, Dennis and George, they see it as what it will do after that, not necessarily, hey, look at me, I'm an IBO champion. Look what it's done for Dennis already. It's got him signed with Matchroom, got some big fights coming up, and that's its purpose. And that's how I rate it, not the belt and itself. But
I think the four major ones is belt maketh man, and the IBO is man maketh belt, because it wasn't legit until Lennox Lewis got it around his waist.
And Triple G had one too, didn't he?
Triple G is the longest reigning, I'm pretty sure. It'll be Klitschko or Triple G, because Triple G won it after Mundine vacated it around 2010 and held it for like a decade.
Yeah.
So, and Klitschko's the same. He held it for God knows how long. But that whole organisation wasn't legit until Lennox Lewis got it around his waist.
Isn't it funny too, though, that the IBO hasn't been able to really make its play? Because when you think about it, you think back to, used to be the WBA and WBC, and then, of course, the IBF come in. They would have been seen like the IBO is now. They gave their title to Larry Holmes. I think Aaron Pryor had one as well, and they got instant credibility. The IBO, even though they had Lewis and Golovkin, they haven't been able to get that same credibility. I remember when the WBO come in, the first fight ever was Thomas Hearns, James Kinchin. It was pretty much invented for the fight. And they got Thomas Hearns on board, and then 30-odd years later, it's the big four. So maybe the IBO will get there one day, but at the moment, it's just seen as a nothing belt.
Yeah, I don't think there should, because as we said before, there's too many bloody belts as there is. I mean, the IBO has been around the same time as the WBO, and the WBO is now considered a major belt. I mean, when did that happen? What, about 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Because the WBO wasn't considered a major belt until about, a decade ago. So,
but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But all good, mate. All right, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to get into our top 10 in a minute. Hang around, and interested.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'll be saying something about that.
I bet you do. I'm already panicking about it now, but I'm going to put it on. So
don't worry about it, mate. You'll be right. Look, if anyone says anything, I'll just back you. So be nice in the comments. Otherwise,
you can disagree, but be nice about it. No, I really appreciate you coming on, mate.
Right, mate. Always good, mate. We'll see you again.
Thanks, Big J. All right, thanks for coming on, Big J. Always good to have our have some guests on there. All right, so just before we move, sorry if we've missed a few comments there, guys. But it's always good to have someone on to chat with. IBO born around the same time as still what WBO once was. IBO waiting for and needs acceptance from the four existing sanctionings for full relevance. Yeah, well, they sort of do, Andy, because the fact you can, end of the day, you can sort of, it's obvious that the other four don't rate the IBO, because if you've got an IBO belt, you can still be ranked by those sanctioning bodies, where if you're ranked, amongst the big four, if you've got one of the belts, then the others will turf you out. But with the IBO, they'll still put you in the rankings. So that probably goes to show where they see the IBO. All right, so around 2004, the WBO came into relevance. Yeah, I think it was a little bit before that. Oh, it might have been, because that was probably around the time De La Hoya and all that were fighting for it, wasn't it? I mean, as I said before, 88 was when it first started. That was Hearns and Kinchin. And it just sort of went through there. But it's been around, what's that, 35 years now. So it's probably taken a while. Maybe the IBO's just got to get there. And maybe I know the WIBA, the girls one, was the first belt, which is why I just don't think it'll ever get there. And I just want to reiterate, I'm not having a shot at the fighters that have got the belt, because, full respect to those girls that have had it, but it's a stepping stone to the bigger belts. You look in Australia, Shannon had it, Shanika Johnson had it, Beck Hawker's got it now. They've all gone, well, Beck Hawker will get a chance, but Shannon and Nix have got, and Nix won the world title, of course. Big fights have come out of it. So I'm not having a crack at the girls themselves. It's just that belt. I just don't rate them. So anyway, we'll move on. All right, on to the top 10. Now, haven't done this for a little while, a little bit of movement. I'm going to put the whole lot up. I'm not going to just go through it bit by bit. I'm going to put the whole lot up. You can analyse it. I'll go through it individually, and then you can come at me. But I'm going to put it up, and we'll see how we go. So here it is. This is my current Australian top 10. So I now have Tim Tszyu at number 1. I'll go through the 10, and then I'll come back and explain each one. Tim Tszyu at number 1. I've got Jai Apatire at number 2, George Kambosos at number 3, Jason Maloney at 4, Andrew Maloney at 5, Liam Paro at number 6, Michael Zarafa at number 7, Liam Wilson at number 8, Justice Huni at number 9, and Stevie Spark at number 10. Now, straight off the bat, the 9 and 10, you could probably have a few different fighters in there. Probably made it a little bit easier. Paul Fleming recently lost, because he was one that people always come at me about why he wasn't in there. I think he might have been in there at some stage, but in activity I pulled him out. But I think you could maybe make a case for Dempsey McKean could be in there. But I'll be honest with you, I think Justice Huni is a far more superior fighter, even though he hasn't had the experience in the rankings. We're talking about pound-for-pound fighters here. So I think Justice Huni there. So Stevie Spark at number 10. I think off the back of the fight with Montana Love, you've got to sort of give him his due. So he's at number 10. Justice Huni at 9. Liam Wilson probably hasn't moved. I think he might have been above Zarafa, but I've just put Zarafa above him a little bit at this stage. But I think you could probably have that either way. The top 6 for me, I don't think you can argue with at all. The order, you're right there, James. Sam Goodman could easily put his hand up to be, I reckon, in 9th or 10th. So very, very good call. Look, you're probably right there, James. I think I'm going to take that on board. I think I would put Sam Goodman at probably number 10 in front of Stevie Spark. There was a bit of change, mate. Big J, I had Jai Apatire at number 1. Tim was number 2. I had Liam Wilson at number 7 and Michael Zarafa at number 8. So just a couple of tweaks. But James, very, very good point there. I went through it all today and thought, have I forgotten someone? Sam Goodman for me probably should come in maybe for Stevie Spark or probably Stevie Spark. But anyway, I'll take that on board. But up to the top of the list, Tim Tszyu for me. That last fight, I know it's only the interim title. It's not the real, the full title, that sort of stuff. And even though it's not his fault, Jai's been out of action for a long time now. Tim Tszyu's been active. He's got that interim title. And I think beating Tony Harrison really puts him in that, well, obviously has put him in that A grade sort of part of the world boxing. So I think it's enough for him at in my opinion, to be at number 1. Jai number 2. Look, George Kambosos could probably still make a case for being either 1 or 2, I think. I mean, at the end of the day, he lost his only losses with to Devin Haney. I mean, geez, undisputed title. So, but you can't get around the fact he's had 2 losses on the trot. So George Kambosos for me, number 3. Number 4 and 5, Jason and Andrew. Maybe you could probably have them either way. I just think Jason's a little bit, his quality of opposition has probably been a little bit higher than Andrew. Even though I think Andrew Maloney's got the harder fight next month in Vegas on the Haney Lomachenko card when he fights Nakatani, and Jason Maloney's got Astrolabio. So, but that's what I said at the moment. Liam Paro, I think, is right on the cusp, but I don't think he's above any of those boys at the moment. So there it is there. Let's see some comments. Okay, for Hunia Wilson. Okay, so you'd have him above Liam Wilson. Okay, but not Stevie Spark. So Jules says, love the fact that Stevie Spark is in there. In my opinion, Akuso has done enough, even in 4 fights beyond that list. Hey, mate, I'm not going to argue with that. I was that close to putting Akuso in there. But it's really hard to put someone in that's only had 4 fights, even though Justice Hoodie's in there. I know it probably contradicts myself. But if you're going by pure talent, he's got to be in the top 10 for sure. So I've got no doubt he'll be a world champion at some stage. So, but yeah, I'm with you, James, for Hunia Wilson. Yep, I'm not going to argue with that, mate. That's for Sam Goodman we're talking about. So yep, definitely make a case for him, especially after beating a former world champion in his last fight in TJ Doherty. So yeah, good call. And maybe does Rowan Murdoch have a case as well above those guys? He's another one I considered as well. James said Spark hits really, really hard. He certainly does, mate. I just love his attitude. The whole, I don't care, just line him up and I'll fight him. I love that about him. A week and a half notice he fought Tim Tszyu. He obviously got stopped in that fight, but Tim Tszyu so much bigger and stronger and than Stevie Spark. So, yep, definitely Andy Akuso's one to watch. I would think after another 1 or 2 fights, I would think he'd be definitely in there. And look, if you go for pure talent, I'd have him probably in there, definitely above Stevie Spark. Justice Hooney, I think Justice Hooney is an unbelievable talent for that weight at heavyweight. I feel I would still have Justice Hooney in there. Liam Wilson could maybe look off his last fight, so unlucky. So the only one, look, as I said, like Sam Goodman is probably the only one I think at this stage would come in, and it would be at the expense of Stevie Spark. But I think at this stage, Stevie Spark's earned his place, and that's the way I see it at the moment. So Andy says Stevie chased Montana to WWE. Is that right? He went to the WWE, did he? I don't know why that fight didn't happen, I will say. There was talk that there was going to be a rematch straight away. Of course, Stevie Sparks fighting Gabriel Golaz Valenzuela on the Canelo and Ryder undercard in Mexico City. So that'll be a good one for him, right up against it. But you've got to take your hat off to this guy for just fighting anyone, anywhere, anytime. So I love that about him. So that's another reason I'll probably put him in there. But Sam Goodman's probably the one, and I would say Kuso in another fight or two. So what do you think of the top, let's say the top 6, I think, guys? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Would you put Jai above Tim? Would you put Jai above them at all? How do you see it? Any other ways you would change that? James, I think you did this last time, didn't you? What are you saying there? I'm going to say, what I do a top 100. Look, James, go for it, mate. All I'm going to ask is don't do a top 10 based on, or top 100 if that's your go, based on box rec rankings. Please don't do it, because our algorithms are all over the place. You know, when I think you had who was it? Might have been Stevie Spark at like number 3 or 4. Now come on, we all know that's not the case. So I'm all for everyone having an opinion. And Big J, you are right, mate. Hooney's still unproven at the international level. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, but you could probably say that about Michael Zarafa. Hasn't really beaten anyone of note internationally. He's beaten Hardman and Mundine, but all the international fights he's had he's lost. So maybe that's another case. Liam Wilson, the other one, did actually still lose that fight. As good of an effort as it was, still lost the fight. So he's another one that's a bit like this. But the circumstances of that fight, which is why he's in there. But as I said, technically he didn't win that fight. Carl, thanks, mate. You like it? I like that you like it too. Jules, Matteo Tapio's a bloke that I don't feel gets enough attention. Don't think he's top 10, but could be very soon. He could be, but Jules, I'll be honest with you, I still see him in the Dennis Hogan situation where he's a Mexican fighter who's based himself in Australia and now he's gone back to Mexico. Mike Altamura will probably send me a text in a minute having a crack at me about it, but I think he was born in Mexico, based himself here for a bit, and now he's gone back to Mexico to base himself over there. I know there's lots of little intangibles involved and lots of little loopholes. I understand that, but that's probably another reason why I didn't consider him, Jules, because I probably just see him as a Mexican fighter. Andy, thank you, mate. I like the list. Thank you. Top 6, can't really argue. Yeah, look, as I said before, mate, maybe you could have the top 3 in a different type of order. I don't think you could have anyone above 4 and 5. So I think Jason and Andrew, I don't think you have any argument to say that they are number 4 and 5. That is it. Maybe you could make a case for Liam Paro, but I don't think Liam Paro still had the type of wins that Jason and Andrew, or fights and wins that that the Maloney's have had. Not just have they fought internationally on the big stage, they've had numerous fights in Vegas and wherever else in America. They've won big fights in the States. And I just don't think you can take that away from the boys. So, and especially Jason. So that's why I've got them there. Liam Paro, of course, if he wins against Arnold Barbosa, could make a case, especially if he fights and wins for the world title. Number 7, what was that in about for, mate? The top 7 you can't argue with, I'm assuming. Jules, Tappy was born in Mexico but grew up... Oh, okay. I didn't know that, mate. Grew up in Australia. Is he back in Mexico? I heard he was in Mexico, Jules, but I might be wrong. I'll have to ask Mike Altamura on Wednesday whether that's the case. But I know he's gone back. Born in... And the other thing too, Jules, maybe it's a little bit technical. I know I'm probably getting a little bit... reading a bit too much into it, but in all the... everything that he markets himself as is as a Mexican fighter. He has the Mexican flag and in the Mexican apparel, all that sort of stuff, Mexican trunks. So, you tell me, is he really embracing his Australian roots or his Mexican roots? So I don't know. Again, maybe I'm being a little bit picky. Carl Akuso will be on there next year. 100% he'll be there, mate. I got a feeling in 12 months' time he'll be in the top 5. He is such a talent. And I saw him live for the first time on the Tim and Harrison undercard. And when you see him live as well, you appreciate even more the skill this guy's got. He made that... who did he fight? Gonzalez, was it? Just made him look really, really ordinary. Not to say Gonzalez was a world beater, but no one had done that to him before. I mean, Akuso totally outclassed him, dropped him, and really did a number on him. So for me, I got no doubt he will be top 5 within 12 months. Jules, agree, nationality is complicated. It is. I've had this before with Costa Zoo when I've done my top 10 Australian fighters of all time, with Costa. So, but then again, there was, people saying, well, Johnny Famechon and Barry Michael and these guys and Rocky Mattioli weren't born in Australia. Yes, but Lester Ellis the same. They were born overseas, but they moved here at a very young age. They were raised here. They had their whole careers here. They called Australia their home. So that's a little bit different to someone that's born in another country, bases themselves here for their career, and then goes home. That to me is not an Aussie. All right. Good question, Carl. Who's your favourite all-time fighter, any division, any era? I'm going to have a bit of a caveat on this, Carl, because I can't split. I've got an international one and I've got an Aussie one, and I can't split them. Internationally, it's Vinny Pazienza. I love the Paz man. I agree he's not one of the greatest fighters of all time, but I love the way he went about it. I love his whole story. I love the way he came to fight. Again, would fight anyone, anywhere, anytime. Went from lightweight up to, was it super middleweight or even light heavyweight? And he's just an entertainer. And I love the Vinny Paz story. Of course, there's a movie out about him, Bleed for This. So I love Vinny. I loved his outfits. I remember, I've said on here before, I remember as an amateur, I used to wear different coloured boots because he used to wear different coloured boots. In hindsight, it would have looked really stupid as an amateur fighter to have different coloured boots, but I love Vinny Paz. Australia, it's easily Jeff Fennick. I love Jeff. Just for me, arguably Australia's greatest fighter. I know a lot of people throw Lionel Rose or Johnny Famechon or Les Darcy, whoever out there. For me, he's the greatest Australian fighter we've ever had. And look, it's probably a little bit different for me as well because I grew up in the, I was a 80s teenager. So when Jeff was winning his world, I still remember the night he won it, 1985. And thinking back, this is before pay TV and all the rest of it. This was when it was just Channel 7 and Channel 9. They actually televised fights back then, if you can believe that, at prime time, even better. I remember the night he won his world title in Sydney against Satoshi Shingaki. It was on Channel 9. He won his world title fight, I think, in his 6th or 7th fight. Immediately following that was Lester Ellis against Rod Sequenin defending his IBF junior lightweight title on Channel 7. Now, I didn't know it at the time. I thought it was just on afterwards. Of course, it was on delay because it was on at like 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night. And back then, too, no social media, so you couldn't check who'd won or whatever. So they did it that way. That was Jeff first and Lester Ellis second. I still remember that night like it was yesterday. Even when Lester won his, and here's another one. It's probably my second all-time favourite Australian fighter, Lester Ellis, because again, 11, 12 years old, whatever it was, he won his world title, and I still remember when he won it, I thought he was Superman, and then Jeff Fenech came along. So to answer your question, mate, Vinny Pazienza internationally, Jeff Fenech number 1 in the Aussie market, with Lester Ellis pretty close behind. Didn't reach the feats of Jeff Fenech, but when he won that world title, I still remember it, mate. It was, and then I think I've said on here a few times. I got to talk to him on the Good Friday appeal on Channel 7, and that was it for me. I could have died right there and then. That was it. It was unbelievable for a 12-year-old kid to talk to the hero on the phone. And if you remember back in the days back then, if you're from that era like me, I'm in my late 40s. If you can remember that around that time, Lester Ellis was an absolute superstar in Victoria. Jeff was probably the the national superstar for some reason. I still can't get my head around it because they both had IBF titles, but for some reason, Jeff was sort of embraced nationally, where Lester was the king of Melbourne. He was the man. Everyone loved Lester, and he was a lot more popular than what Jeff was. What do we got there? Can we make a new pound for pound background picture? If you want, mate. It's probably a bit old and tired, this one, isn't it? I've just put the Aussie thing in here. I think I will, mate. I'll put it just for you. I'll do it next time. Carl says, I see Akuso moving like David Morrell. He's just a brilliant, just everything slows down around him, and they can't hit him. And he probably got tagged a couple of times last time, but a little bit self-inflicted. He got a little bit cute a few times and wore a couple, but just a brilliant fighter. A couple more questions before I go there, guys. International resume. Who do you believe has the best resume? Australian fighting overseas. For me, it's Daniel Gill. For overseas, yeah, well, that's probably the one hit on Jeff Fenech, I suppose, isn't it? Big J. He had, obviously, the Azuma Nelson fight. But apart from that, didn't fight overseas, internationally, where Daniel Gill did. And same as Danny Green, Anthony Mundine. I know they had wins overseas, but never, not really so mundane, but Danny Green did, of course. But yeah, you're right. For someone that's actually a truly Australian fighter that's gone over, George Kambosos, you might have to put in there as well, mate. Maybe he's got to have a few more to get to that level. But he went to Germany twice. He's gone to the States. Didn't have a lot of success in the States, though. Obviously, did in Germany. I don't know, mate. It's, could you go back to Lionel Rose winning in Japan and Jimmy Carruthers winning in South Africa? I don't know. Johnny Famechon was in England, wasn't it? Lionel Rose was in Japan, yeah. So, yeah, it's an interesting one. It's debatable, put it that way. All right, just a couple of more questions there, guys. A friend of mine in the States has caught with Vinny Paz a month ago at a meet and greet and ended up spending the weekend with him driving around. That's awesome, mate. That is awesome. I think I've said on here before, I have met him a couple of times, and he was an awesome guy. He's not as out there as what he does seem, being interviewed, but a very, very grounded type of guy, very content in himself and just backs himself. And, just the heart of Farlap, So, and as I said, the entertainer. I love when he fought, even up in weight against, Duran and Roy Jones Jr. He just bring it on, let's go. And he just has my full respect. So anyway. Four Kings and I, Mike, still my favourite. Fenech was my odds favourite too. Yep, I agree with that, mate. Blake. All right. Now, that's Manfa Saludos Amigo Urigo. I don't know what that means, mate. Something about your friend. Fill us in there, mate. I don't. I do study a little bit of Spanish, but something about your friend. All right. Anyway, put it in there. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this week. Appreciate you logging in. I know there's going to be a few more comments coming about this, but we've sort of gone about 10 minutes over at the moment. Look, really appreciate everyone joining in again. Again, if you haven't seen the latest Watch Your Verdict, check it out. It is Floyd Mayweather and Jose Luis Castillo. This week's one will be the second Larry Holmes, Michael Spinks fight in Vegas at the Hilton Hotel. Very, very controversial 15-round decision that was, so look out for that. And of course, Wednesday we will be doing the boxing deep dive. Okay, so all good. Thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it. Keep the subs and likes and shares and all that sort of stuff. Doing what you got to do, and I look forward to seeing you next week at 7 o'clock. Thanks, guys.